And we're live on this Memorial Day weekend. Welcome to the program, everyone. We got a ton of news to get to. We just saw the president there at Arlington Cemetery. We'll go out to hear his comments momentarily, but we got a lot of headlines going on, including some breaking news. There's a purge going on within the Intel division, a purge that probably needed to happen, was bound to happen, and suddenly is going down. According to new reports, more than 100 people at the NSC have been put on leave. So the National Security Council getting dealt quite a blow. You know, Marco Rubio is in charge of that, in addition to being Secretary of State right about now. Letitia James, meanwhile. Wow, I never thought I'd see this day where the mainstream media is leaving her hanging out to dry. They don't really want to have too much to do with her amid these new mortgage allegations and the idea that she's going to use New York taxpayer dollars to pay for her own legal defense for her personal issues. Amazing story. We got new Trump polls out. The New York Times is reporting on this, and everybody's flipping out, freaking out, because it looks like all kinds of places, including the Northeast, are suddenly going MAGA. Harvard didn't get the memo, though, apparently, refusing to comply with Donald Trump's orders, and that's going to mean a lot of problems. He's looking at deporting 7,000 students out of Harvard University. Bye-bye, Cambridge. And, of course, as I said, Memorial Day weekend here. We want to go out to the president at Arlington and talk a little bit about the future of the military under the new team. Welcome to the show. I hope that you subscribe, share, like. I am live, so I can see all your comments in real time. It's so good to have so many of you here, and look at how we're growing up to 800,000 nearly strong right now, thanks to you. A mass purge, ladies and gentlemen, right now being reported at Donald Trump's Security Council. This is really interesting. You know, Marco Rubio is the new head of the council. This is after we saw Mike Waltz leave to go become the ambassador at the UN. And we've seen a number of changes. I mean, don't forget what happened over at the NSA. Don't forget how it was rumored even when Mike Waltz was leaving that there would be additional people. Don't forget, Signalgate was the big deal. Signalgate, and people were wondering, did Mike Waltz have staff members that chose to add a reporter from the Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, onto that Signalgate chat message, or was that just pure, utter stupidity on everyone's part? Either way, Mike Waltz now over at the UN as ambassador, and Marco Rubio moved in, and Marco Rubio decided to fire a few more people. This is on the heels, right, of Donald Trump doing that. Donald Trump doing this not too long ago. Don't forget, you know, this was sort of brewing, right, as we saw the NSA guy go down, as we saw people that are really not aligned with the Trump administration and its view on things. They're suffering the consequences right now. Look at this. The headline coming out of CNN first, the Trump administration putting more than 100 officials at the National Security Council at the White House on administrative leave as part of a restructuring under interim National Security Advisor and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. So this is pretty amazing. I mean, they're just going in and they are totally cleaning house. Really kind of interesting, refreshing to see, wouldn't you say? I mean, I don't think that he felt for 2 seconds like the Intel team was ever on his side, right? And I think we know that the Intel team wasn't necessarily on his side. I can report to you a dear friend of mine who used to work within the CIA and is very, very MAGA and close to the Trump administration, was called in last time around just to have a meeting to sort of get a lay of the land, because Donald Trump wanted to say, like, is there anyone I can trust here? Who can I trust? Who can I not trust? Because don't forget, that deep state is so embedded within the administration, and they have their own views of how things should be going down. Donald Trump doesn't necessarily agree with those views. So if you try and turn something on its head, you've got to have the personnel to be doing what you want done. Right? Don't forget that. You know, you saw Timothy Howe, don't forget, along with his deputy, Wendy Noble, that were let go about maybe about 6 weeks ago or so. And a lot of people cited Laura Loomer as being a reason for that. We know Laura, she's been on the show here. Again, head of National Security Agency and Cyber Command. He was let go. That was shortly after the Signalgate thing, because, I mean, hey, if you're running the Cyber Command and you get all kinds of problems happening in Cyberland, including with leaks within your own White House, maybe that would be a reason to let him go. But if you look at what Laura Loomer has said, it was really about his loyalties. In other words, this is a guy who had gotten appointed by General Milley. This is a guy who, even though he was sort of a career military person, she viewed, and she communicated this view, by the way, with Donald Trump as a problem. Going back to what she said back at that time, she really was making the point that you need strong vetting. You need to know that the people that are there in the White House have the president's back. She said this both on a tweet and then on another podcast. Let me go to it.
I harped on the most during the campaign season was, the importance of vetting. We need to vet people so that we don't have the same nightmare that we saw happen in the first administration, where people who were disloyal to President Trump curry favor once the election's over, after, talking to him the entire election season. And then they just get to go, oh, you know what? I'm going to sneak in and I'm going to reap all the benefits and the glory and the praise of getting a White House job.
Sure.
I thought that we were keeping a binder full of receipts. I don't know if some of the people on the campaign meant it when they said they were keeping the receipts, but I meant it.
Yeah.
I literally have a binder of receipts, and I know who's loyal and I know who is disloyal.
So, obviously, if you're running the country, you need people that are loyal to you and loyal to your agenda. And that was a big part of the problem, right? Last go around, think about Comey. We're still feeling the effects of Comey. Comey's still going on television saying somehow that he's justified in his 86-47 thing because he didn't even know what it meant. I mean, Comey is a great example of that, and the Russia stuff that followed, which, by the way, we're going to be learning more information on because they're declassifying all of those documents, and that should be happening within the next week or two. So get ready for that stuff. In other words, you got to have people that are on your side, and I've said this before. Look, I've been a business reporter my entire career. A new CEO comes in to a company. If that CEO does not have his or her team in place doing what his or her desires are for the company, then guess what? You got to fire them all. Because you need everybody on the same page. And so that's what's going on here. And we're seeing the effects. I mean, again, back to Laura, she was making the point that this was a General Milley pick and what the heck were we doing with people running the NSA, as well as her points about who was at the NSC. And Donald Trump defended her at the time.
So Laura Loomer is a very good patriot. She is a
I know this is hard to hear, but he's saying positive stuff about Laura.
very strong person. And I saw her yesterday for a little while. She makes recommendations of things and people. And sometimes I listen to those recommendations like I do with everybody. I listen to everybody and then I make a decision. But I saw her yesterday. She was at the ceremony. And she'll always have something to say, usually very constructive.
What did she recommend?
She recommended certain people for jobs.
Adding to the administration, not
Adding.
but not firing.
Well, she'll recommend that too. But yesterday she recommended some people for jobs.
Did she have anything to do with the NSC aides who were ousted?
No, I don't know.
Do you know how many, sir? Do you know how many from the NSC?
Not many.
Was it?
Okay, so that's interesting. He's actually contradicting what some of the reports were. He's saying, no, she didn't have anything to do with all the NSC people that were let go. But I'm just saying, I think her interest is in making sure that people that are there on the team are actually on the team, which is, not that extraordinary an ask. Again, that's what he should expect. Obama had his team people there. I mean, Biden had his team people there. Clearly, heck, those people were covering up for the fact that he was seriously aging and ailing. And yet, Laura making a couple of recommendations about the NSC a month ago sent Peppermint Patty over at MSNBC into a near conniption fit.
Call it a close personal friendship with Trump over the years, cozying up to him at Mar-a-Lago events and even traveling with Trump on the campaign trail last year. You can see right there. Even accompanying him to a 9/11 anniversary observance in Lower Manhattan. I mean, that was quite a choice by Trump. It was so outrageous that actually fellow Republicans finally pushed Trump to distance himself from Loomer and boot her off his plane. Just take a minute to sit with this. The president and a number of his key cabinet members and his chief of staff had to listen to rantings of a 9/11 conspiracy theorist in the Oval Office. Imagine being Howard Lutnick listening to that. Remember, his financial firm, Cantor Fitzgerald, lost 658 people in the World Trade Center on 9/11, including his own brother. So what was Loomer really there for? I mean, according to the New York Times, she walked into the White House with a sheaf of papers attacking the character and loyalty of numerous NSC officials. Now, to be clear, these weren't exactly rogue liberals she was attacking, not people just secretly Democrats in the rough there. I mean, a lot of these people had actually worked for the Trump administration during the first term. But Loomer said they were disloyal to Trump because they were, quote, neocons. Now, sources tell NBC News that Waltz stood up for his employees in the meeting. But remember, he's on pretty thin ice right now in the White House. Mainly, it seems, over the fact that he had Jeffrey Goldberg's contact in his phone, less than over the group chat he initiated that included attack plans and emojis. Who knows? With that aside, in the end, it seems Waltz's National Security Council got Loomered. Now, that is her term, not my term. But after that meeting, as the world economy was melting down from Trump's tariff announcement, the president fired at least 6 officials from the National Security Council, according to the Times.
Okay, well, guess what? There's no 100 more, so she's flipping out over 6. I don't know what Peppermint Patty's going to do now that there's about 100. Look, she's just awful, by the way. Impossible to watch. She really should have stayed doing the PR thing for Biden. She was pretty good at that, I got to say. I mean, way better than KJP, but this whole anchor thing she doesn't really get. There's no enthusiasm. There's no excitement. There is no pizzazz other than the red hair, right? Okay, so here's the deal. She, the woman you just saw, along with everybody else in that administration, including all those deep state people, what did they do? They were covering for somebody. Covering for this guy. This is the most unbelievable soundbite. I got to play this for you because you need to understand. It's my favorite one. When we talk about how bad Joe Biden was, look at how he's just dazing off and clearly like doesn't know what day it is as these reporters are asking him questions. This was in 2024. He's still running for president. Don't forget, all of these people that are now being purged from the NSC and from other parts of the deep state, they covered for this. Think about it, all right?
I have a lot of questions. I better not start the questions. I'll get in trouble.
Did you hear that? He said, I better not start the questions. I'll get in trouble.
Super Tuesday voters.
And so, of course, they ask questions.
Super Tuesday said, do you have a message for voters? Thanks, come on.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
And they're saying, hey, everybody leave. Thank you. And if you're listening to this, I'm kind of narrating it a little bit. To go over to Spotify if you get a chance and give me 5 stars and subscribe to it there. But you see him, he doesn't know what to do. He's just in a really, 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 really bad state. And yet these people were covering for him. So they were enablers who, by the way, are going to be facing an investigation, including one Jill Biden and a few others. Maybe Peppermint Patty gets included in that too. It's kind of ironic, right? That you have Jake Tapper, who also was an enabler and also covered up, right, for one Joe Biden. He wrote the book along with Alex Thompson over at Axios, and they're exposing it all now. And it's kind of good, actually. I'm just going to say it's better that you have somebody that's a Democrat and a total lib write this. I mean, it's funny because it's sort of disgusting, too. Jake is just trying to make a buck off it. But it's important because all of this is coming out. And I think it's actually going to lead to a lot of things getting reversed. For example, the auto pen, right, that was in existence for that whole time. How do you possibly honor all of those pardons that were put in place by the auto pen? I mean, the pardons didn't even make sense because the people hadn't even been charged with something. So all of that's going to come up. And we did that on the show. I encourage you to go look at Friday's show because we did a whole bunch on that. That is up for grabs, ladies and gentlemen. But this mass purge, this shows you how serious he is about changing things at the White House. And, you know, he hasn't been getting all the intelligence briefings. It's something that's driving one Susan Rice, an Obama holdover, right, kind of crazy. She's like, how can he not be getting these intel briefings? And I think he's not getting all the intel briefings because he's sitting there going, do I want it from these people? No, I actually want to go and talk to a lot of people. Donald Trump talks to a lot of people. He'll talk to anyone, all right? So he'll call up reporters. He'll get information sort of his own way. He doesn't want it spoon-fed to him and sort of micromanaged by an intel team that has their own agenda. Here's Rice.
It's been recently reported, David, that the President of the United States, who's been in office well over 100 days now, has only received the presidential daily briefing, the most important, highly classified daily intelligence briefing, some 12 times, some 12 days of his 100 plus days in office. What is he doing if he's not reading the PDB? And I hate to say this, you could say it about the airplane, you could say it about Signalgate, you could say it about so many different things. But if any other president had refused or opted not to receive the presidential daily briefing from the intelligence community on a regular basis, it would be a huge, huge scandal with massive investigations in Congress and huge speculation that the president is not playing with a full deck. That's a key part of the job.
Excuse me, you want to know who was not playing with a full deck? Do I need to show you again? One President Biden. I remember when he was there with Georgia Maloney and he started to wander off at G7 because he saw a parachuter over there and he got kind of interested like a little kid, and they had to bring him back in order to have the photo op. And he was so slowly putting on his glasses. It was so clear he wasn't playing with a full deck. Was he getting his briefing every morning? He was probably sleeping through it. I am telling you, mark my words, this is going to become a very, very, very big deal, because you cannot have some kind of random person behind the scenes running the operation when the American people elected Joe Biden. So for 4 years, you had AutoPen. James Comer's already on it. They're launching an investigation in Congress about this very issue. And I'm telling you, heads are going to roll.
No, they just talked to Joe Biden, and he was tip-top. He was in great physical condition. He was at the top of his game. Now they're coming back covering the track saying, yeah, it looks like he was in mental decline. Well, we all know he's in mental decline. What we need to know is who was calling the shots at the White House. And one thing that was also mentioned on your show thus far is that when you sign a document that has legal implications, it has to be signed personally. It can't be signed by an AutoPen. You use AutoPen for proclamations and mass letters and things like that. So I think that if we could understand more about the AutoPen and whether or not Joe Biden authorized it, I think this could lead to a lot of those executive orders being kicked out in court.
All right. And when do you expect these subpoenas to go out?
Well, the letters have already gone out to the staffers as well as Dr. O'Connor. So if we don't hear anything from them in a week, then I would expect to start seeing subpoenas.
And if they fight the subpoena, what do you do?
We'll go to court. Jesse, they're going to try to plead executive privilege, and they're lawyering up, and we're ready. That's why we're making sure every I's dotted and every T's crossed. The best thing that's happened in the last week with respect to this is all the new books that are coming out and all the former Biden staffers who are trying to cover their tracks. You're going to see people like Pete Buttigieg who think they have political futures come forward and say, we didn't know anything. There were gatekeepers. They wouldn't let us speak with Joe Biden. And the more that comes out, the easier it's going to be to get to the truth.
It's amazing. It's honestly amazing what they did. And then they're sitting there going, well, why isn't it that Donald Trump is not trusting the NSC? Why isn't he trusting his intel team? Well, maybe he's not trusting them because, one, last time, look what James Comey did. And then the last 4 years, look what they did to cover up for Biden, because they wanted Biden no matter what, right? They just didn't want Trump. So he's actually kind of doing the right thing. Meanwhile, speaking about subpoenas going out, whoa, another subpoena going out for none other than our favorite lady, Leticia James. I'm saying that facetiously, of course. I'll tell you, she's in all kinds of hot water right now. Really, really, really hot water. Leticia James getting dealt a new blow here as the mainstream media just deserts her. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was reading over the last couple of days. It's like nobody was covering this story, right? Just little old Trish Regan here on this show. Reminder, subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. We're growing. And maybe it's because we're doing things that other people aren't. Here I was covering this story and it was like, where's the mainstream media on this? Nowhere. Crickets. Literally nothing. And then all of a sudden you're starting to see this groundswell. Why? Oh, because the woman is corrupt. I'm just going to say it, okay? I mean, this particular lawsuit really annoyed me from the get-go, even more than the others. I mean, they were all bad, right? But this one in particular, because it was so outrageous, and it's like the mainstream media is finally catching up to that idea. Check this out. In New York Magazine, pretty lefty New York Magazine, Letitia James is caught in a war of her own making. That's the headline, all right? And they're going on to say, it's a fact beyond reasonable dispute that Leticia James weaponized her official power as New York Attorney General to pursue Donald Trump for political purposes, all right? And I'm reading it straight from New York Magazine. Now, you've heard me say that, but when you start seeing the liberal media say that, that's actually a pretty significant development. I mean, they don't like her right now. Not at all. They liked her, I guess, maybe when they thought she had a shot. I mean, they were all over this story. It was so nuts. I mean, imagine a $500 million fine for something that, you know, there's no victim in, that everybody said that they would do again. It made no sense. And yet the irony of everything is that what she was trying to go after Donald Trump for was the very thing that she did. Let's go back to New York Magazine. James did sue Trump, of course, and won for the moment after a circus-like bench trial focused on Trump's habitual overvaluation of his assets and bank loan applications. That was the charge, of course. He says it's worth one thing. Frankly, it's up to the bank, right? Whether or not they take on the loan, because they're the ones that are doing the due diligence. And clearly Deutsche Bank thought it was worth whatever he said it was worth. So you want to call it overvaluation, I would just say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You got to actually sell something in order to actually have it be valued properly. New York State Judge Arthur N. Gorin found Trump civilly liable for fraud and slammed him with damages amounting to over $500 million, including mounting interest. During the trial, James made a series of wildly inappropriate out-of-court statements. This is the New York Magazine that would ordinarily get a prosecutor fired. At one point, she publicly branded Trump and his family members as liars while they were testifying. Wow, okay? Again, now you may have heard that from me, but it's something when you start hearing it from the liberal media, and they go on to say something that I've pointed out before as well, that her theory of liability was so flimsy that it barely concealed her previously acknowledged motivation to stick one to Trump by any means available. That was the, he's too male, too pale, too stale, that whole bit, right? And how she was going to get him because, well, that was her political job as she sought to get it. The purported fraud victims were multi-billion-dollar banks that were repaid in full on their loans to the Trump organization and made millions of dollars in profits through interest payments. Unsurprisingly, a New York appellate division panel voiced pointed skepticism of James's victimless case, and seemed poised either to substantially reduce the verdict or throw it out. Remember, I'm a little perplexed as to why that hasn't happened yet, because we've played this whole thing. But just to remind you, as soon as the attorney for Letitia James, right, comes to the bench there, her name is Judith Vale, they're like on her. They have no use for her.
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated... Ms.
Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners, where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved a consumer protection aspect, It involved protection of the market.
Well, several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public marketplace.
In other words, why is the state of New York bringing this case? Why would the attorney general bother herself with this? Again, the judge saying this is a private transaction. What the HELLs are doing in my court?
It was using...
I'm sorry, but what's being described sounds an awful lot like a potential commercial dispute between private actors.
Well, to go back to the first question about whether there's other examples of this, there are other examples of this. In the First American case, the Attorney General brought a 6312 case where the transaction at issue was between a very big bank, Wells Fargo, and a professional appraisal firm.
But it wasn't the concern there that the public would ultimately be negatively impacted and affected by what those corporate actors were doing.
And that concern is here as well, because when you have hidden risks getting injected into the market,
I know how
that
you can...
hurts.
Okay, so what's so interesting about all this, right? And she's like, oh, but that's the same concern here because you have these hidden risks getting interjected into the market. I mean, I think the judges would argue that it was a contained risk because it was Deutsche Bank itself and it was one individual client. Right? You can't really go after Donald Trump for that. Again, private transaction between the two of them. Now, when you get over to Letitia Baby was doing something entirely different. Letitia was actually putting taxpayer funds at risk. This is what's so crazy. And this is why you have not just New York Magazine on her right now, but also the Wall Street Journal, which, by the way, lately has absolutely no use for Donald Trump. Have you noticed? I'm looking at the headlines. I'm like, wow, guys, tell us how you really feel. But the Wall Street Journal reporting on it now saying, look, you can't really do this. She was listing a Norfolk, Virginia home as her primary residence as recently as 2023. Saying this. She's trying to say it's a technicality, but I'm looking at a history here because you get a 2001 certificate at a Brooklyn property. They kept year after year after year saying it was 4 levels instead of 5 because that allowed her to get a special, FHA thing as a result. I mean, you're talking about federal funds here, federal funds that she was using. And this is a mess. It's a mess for her. It's now become a grand jury investigation. They have opened that grand jury investigation. They have begun sending subpoenas, and it's so bad. The Eastern District of Virginia just started sending those subpoenas out. That she did this little breakfast the other day in New York, and she had to address it. But she didn't do a very good job at it. And again, you've got all the New York press asking these questions, from New York Magazine to the Wall Street Journal, to the New York Post. New York Post is pretty conservative in general, but Wall Street Journal has no use for Trump right now, but they're like, this is nuts. And New York Magazine, I think, is really, really telling. Anyway, here's her excuse. There's a little bit of vibration, so a little difficult to hear, but let's listen in.
As you know, we filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump and his family. We secured a $454 million judgment against him, which is on appeal. The case is on appeal. I have no idea when that case will be decided. This investigation into me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia, but prior to that, I had indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, that I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. And in the mortgage application, I indicated that I would not live in Virginia and I was not a resident. They just took the power of attorney and they're using that as a basis for enforcement for their investigation, when in reality, the power of attorney was never used to determine my eligibility for.
Okay, you are an attorney. Therefore, that kind of clerical error should never have been made. And when you combine it with some of the other stuff that was going down, Letitia, you're in trouble. And this grand jury investigation is going to look into all of it. You're looking at 30 years in the slammer? Violation of 18 U.S.C. 1014, false statements to obtain a federally insured loan. 18 U.S.C. 1001, false statements to the government she's got problems.
What's your thoughts on Letitia James? Director Polte, according to him, Leticia James says that the alleged mortgage fraud was simply a mistake. I want to get your thoughts on that. She put down that her father was her husband in order, and this is very similar to, I guess, the false accounts they have on here.
Well, I don't know what it is currently, but Letitia James, who's the Attorney General of New York State, it seemed, I'm not involved in that at all. I know it's being handled by various groups, I guess, but it's major fraud, mortgage documents, and fraudulent everything. I think she said the father was her husband, which she had to have a husband, so she chose her father, and she put it down, and she had didn't she sign in Virginia, yet she said she lived in Virginia, yet she's the New York State Attorney General, and she did that for tax reasons, so she could take advantage of taxes. And she had the wrong number of units. She had a much different number, which wouldn't have allowed her to qualify and scam the government. So I don't know. I think she's very bad for New York, but I really don't know too much about it, but I appreciate the question. Thank you very much. Yes.
There's no genocide.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You know what? I think he knows more than he's letting on about it. But again, he has to be cautious and careful because this is the DOJ's job to look into this one. And they are looking into it because, she may face 30 years. I mean, incredible, right? Only it's the exact crime that she was trying to go after him for, except that hers is so much more worse. Okay, so here's the document, right? This is, you look at it circled, she said that this is her primary residence, and so the allegation is that she was trying to get a better rate somehow. This is the Norfolk House in Virginia. Then you get the Brownstone in Brooklyn. What are you doing saying you got 4 levels? Oh, because you qualify for a better federal housing assistance. Oh, and then there's that one that you heard Donald Trump mention where she signed on as her father's wife back in 1983 so that they could get this house, this little house together as husband and wife. I mean, come on. You see the history, you see the pattern of lying? She's a lawyer. And by the way, she was already a lawyer back then. And she's signing on as her father's wife? The media has caught on to her and they're like, okay, we got to pick our battles here. I mean, we clearly picked the wrong side with Joe Biden and now we're getting exposed over that one. Maybe we got to be a little bit careful, more careful with Letitia James, Stephen Miller, coming out the other day and just saying, listen, this woman is guilty of multiple serial criminal violations and she's going down.
Letitia James says the allegations against her are nothing more than a revenge tour by the Trump administration. What's your response?
My response is that Letitia James is one of the most corrupt, shameless individuals ever to hold public office. She's guilty not only of those crimes, but of countless more crimes by using and abusing her public office to try to persecute an innocent man, depriving him of his rights, engaging in a conspiracy to obstruct our election, and to overthrow our democratic processes and procedures. She is guilty of multiple significant serial criminal violations.
Serial criminal violations, okay? And now a lot of press in New York is getting kind of upset because the idea is she's going to use taxpayer dollars to defend herself. She hired Hunter Biden's old attorney, Abby Lowell, who cost a pretty penny. And now the GOP there in the Senate in New York is like, I don't think so. You're not going to use taxpayer dollars. Come on. And that was another thing that came up, by the way, in the article at the New York Magazine. This was nuts. Here's the New York Post saying this proposed use of public money is a gross misuse of taxpayer dollars. It undermines, they're quoting the Republicans here, it undermines public trust in government and sends a troubling message that elected officials and state employees are entitled to publicly funded legal defense, even for matters entirely disconnected from their public responsibilities. And so they're going to the state comptroller and they're like, there's no way that she's going to have access to the $10 million legal slush fund. No way. And this, I think, is important because here, let me put this up on the screen, you guys. This is also from New York Magazine saying this is pretty bad. This is like unbelievable that she's trying to use taxpayer dollars. The writer writes, James has again displayed dubious ethical instincts in her response to the pending inquiry. She has inexplicably chosen to use the resources of her public office to respond to the investigation. James issued a statement through the AG's official spokesperson. She reportedly plans to use state funds, that's taxpayer dollars, to cover some of her legal expenses. What a dreadful idea. By dragging the AG's office into her personal mess, James has made some of her colleagues into potential witnesses and subjected them to subpoenas. Prosecutors might ask the AG spokesperson, for example, what James initially said about the allegations. There's no privilege there, and it's unclear how the AG can justify using New York taxpayer money to fund her criminal personal defense. Okay, so this is wacky. I mean, this woman's something else. You know what I think? I think she's going to have to do exactly what she said Donald Trump should do. Remember? He might just have to sell some of his assets.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Leticia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Again, funny twist of fate, right? The irony here. Oh, you wanted to seize his assets. I think he's going to be seizing yours, or you're going to have to sell some in order to cover your expensive lawyer that used to represent Hunter Biden. Because taxpayers shouldn't be on the hook for that. No, you're going to be out of money. You're going to have to sell that home in Norfolk, Virginia, I would imagine. Maybe the Brooklyn Brownstone in order to cover some of this, because no one wants to pay for your high-priced attorney for your personal matters. Now, the attorney wrote a letter saying this is just political, this is Trump's vendetta, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sorry. You know what? Maybe those that live in glass houses should not throw stones. Leticia, you're looking at up to 30 years, and Donald Trump has got to be loving every single moment of it.
I can say unrelated to that, she's a disaster for New York. She's a horrible, horrible human being, and I think she's a total crook. There's no question about it, but that's just my opinion. Pam's going to have to do what she wants. She's a very bad person. She's a very, very bad person who campaigned solely on, I'm going to get Donald Trump over and over again. She's a sick person, but that's has nothing to do with what Pam does. Pam is going to do what's right. She always does. I've known her a long time.
Well, the investigation is underway. The Eastern District of Virginia has begun its grand jury subpoenas. So Leticia, watch out. It's about to get extremely, extremely, extremely interesting. Right? You know, maybe she's just not that smart. I think that's part of it. She really isn't that smart. She's a political animal, but not the brightest. She go to Howard Law School. She definitely didn't go to Harvard. Not that Harvard's any better. Harvard University finding itself in a whole lot of trouble right now because the president is making all kinds of demands on Harvard. And guess what? It looks like you might see some 7,000 students getting deported out of the country because Harvard is not complying with the DHS requests. The DHS isn't asking for much. They just wanted a little bit of data on some of these foreign-born students to see if they had been rabble-rousers and more than that, right? Had become sort of controversies on the campus at Harvard, but Harvard refused to give them any of this information. And so now you're looking at a whole different ballgame. Donald Trump coming out, demanding the names and the countries of all foreign-born students at Harvard as he ratchets up this war with Harvard. Let's take a look at the post he put on Truth Social, ladies and gentlemen. He's not messing around. He's pretty sick of it. You know, he asked for some information, they wouldn't give it. He said, why isn't Harvard saying that almost 31% of their students are from foreign lands, and yet those countries, some not at all friendly to the United States, pay nothing towards their students' education, nor do they ever intend to. Nobody told us that. We want to know who these foreign students are, a reasonable request, since we give Harvard billions of dollars a year, but Harvard isn't exactly forthcoming. We want those names. We want those countries. Harvard has $52 billion, so use it and stop asking for the federal government to continue granting you money. You see, it could have been so simple. Kristi Noem the other day just came forward and said, listen, we want some information on some of the students there. Can you go ahead and give us that? Thank you, Hemers Gary. I see your generous note there. Love from the UK. In the UK, it's good to see some of our friends over in the UK are watching. But listen, he's just saying, I need some information. DHS needs information. Marco Rubio ought to be able to get the information. You got to know who's in the country. And if you're not going to provide Kristi Noem with the information, DHS with the information, then you're going to have a problem. And this is effectively a warning to every university out there. Kristi said as much.
Some of these universities have even barred law enforcement officers from coming on campus and haven't even allowed there to be basic law and order on the areas that they're responsible for. So we're going to continue to do our investigations and make sure that what the Department of Homeland Security is responsible for, it will be done with integrity for the way that Congress laid out that programs should work, and the opportunities that we have to allow people to come into this country, learn, and to be a part of a country that promotes freedom and liberty and that everybody is equal. That's not what Harvard is doing, and that's not what we're seeing in some of these college campuses.
Could you foresee, or are you now considering similar moves with other universities like Columbia that has allowed Jewish students to be threatened and made unsafe?
Absolutely. We are absolutely, this should be a warning to every other university to get your act together. Get your act together, because we are coming to make sure that these programs, that you are facilitating an environment where students can learn, where they're safe, and that they're not discriminated against based on their race or their religion. Anti-Semitism will not be stood for, and any participation with a country or an entity or a terrorist group that hates America and perpetuates this kind of violence, we will stop it, and we will not allow that to happen, especially in places where our kids need to grow up and really learn what this country is about, what the world is about, and what it means to promote freedom and liberty.
There's a bit.
In other words, DHS wanted information on the 7,000 foreign students. They came forward with some pretty simple questions. Have those kids been taking part in any kind of these demonstrations? These anti-Semitic demonstrations, have they been caught doing that? Have any of them left as a result of any of that? They needed information, because you got to know who's here. You can't just say, okay, Harvard, we're going to give you the ability to, roll out the red carpet and just invite anyone in. If they're here, we need to know what they're doing. And that seems like a very, very reasonable request. This is her original. She sent a letter and she's asking for this information. They wouldn't provide it. And so now, as a result, Donald Trump's like, okay, well, we're not messing around. We're not playing games. You guys don't want to give us this information? Then, hey, we gave you a deadline. It's over. We're revoking your ability to give visas to any foreign students, which means any foreign students that are there or coming in for the coming school year, guess what? They no longer have a visa. They must either find another university or another college, or they must leave the country. So that's a serious blow to Harvard that has 27% of its student body coming from these foreign lands. They could, again, just comply and give the government the information, but they wouldn't. So now they're suing, and they got a judge to say, okay, we're going to put an injunction on this. We're going to temporarily bar the administration from doing this. And the administration's like, yeah, good luck. We're not going to do it. So this is really coming down to a bit of a war, and Donald Trump has it out for this university. Do not forget how woke this university is. Don't forget what they're trying to teach at this university. And his point being, when we need information on kids that we believe are a threat to other students, American students on campus, we deserve that information. Did you learn nothing from Columbia? Thank you very much. All of these schools are being put on notice. And you know what? This is a big wake-up call overall, because the woke stuff is going to end. And you got to actually prioritize Americans and American values. This is what people voted for, and they're going to keep voting for it. New polls to show you today. This is amazing. The whole country's going MAGA. The whole country's going red, and the Democrats don't know what to do about it. I mean, the best they've got is what? Jasmine Crockett and AOC? Sorry, that's not going to get you very far. It's really not. And the New York Times is losing it. They're flipping out. Take a look at this map. All the counties where voters consecutively shifted in one direction in the last 3 elections. How Donald Trump has remade America's political landscape as MAGA sweeps the nation. But you know what? I'm going to just say something. It's not just Donald Trump. Well, we want to give him a lot of credit, right? It's actually the idiocy of the Democrats. You know how we've talked about the 80-20 issues and how they're always like on the wrong side of everything? And so politically, I don't know how you recover from that. When you're consistently on the side of, the illegal gang members over the American citizens that are trying to, work 2-3 jobs to earn a living and pay for their kids' education and maybe go on a vacation once a year, like that doesn't go over well. And so you've consistently seen this from the left where they're just on the wrong side of everything. And the result is this map. You see that in places that you wouldn't think. They're all moving towards Trump. And do you see all that sort of eastern section, the eastern areas? I mean, even New Jersey and New York, they're moving towards Trump. The Democrats are flipping out. What are they going to do? Oh, here's the newest, latest, and greatest. They're trying to go after young men in video games. They're trying to study how the memes are working that Donald Trump has been so successful with. And so they're going to try and come up with what they call a SAM, a Speaking with American Men strategic plan. Good luck, because apparently you really hate American men, especially white men. You've told us over and over and over again, and the Letitia Jameses of the world are the one that you so admire. So you're going to have to probably do a little more than 20 million when you get into that region. This is Eric Doherty, who works for Florida's Voice and actually works with my friend Drew that you guys have heard time to time in the background on this show. Democrat Party plans to spend $20 million to reclaim support from young men. According to the New York Times, the plan creates a strategy called SAM, Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan. It will study the syntax used by young men to create viral posts online and recommends ad buys within the video games. When you over and over and over again tell a group of people like these young men that they are the problem, that they're mansplaining, that they're this, that they're that, and that white men are, the threat to America, do you really think that they're going to vote for you? No. Okay, Dems? No. You've lost them. They have no use for you because you have no use for them. So Donald Trump is offering a path forward for all Americans. And that's why you see his polling data going up, up, and away. Well, also, the market doesn't hurt, right? Take a look at CNN talking about this exact effect.
I think it's time for a bit of a reality check, right? We were going to late April. Donald Trump's approval rating, his net approval seemed to be falling. He seemed to be adios amigos. People were writing his political obituary. He is rising from the dead. Look at this. Hello, Trump's net approval rating among voters. This is the Reuters Ipsos polling. Look at this. In late April, he was 8 points underwater. But look at where he was in the most recent poll among voters. He's up 7 points to a -1 point net favorability rating. This is not the picture I think a lot of people were thinking that we would be painting in late April. I think a lot of people expected his approval rating to keep dropping, but at least according to Reuters Ipsos, it's in fact rising.
Put this then in a larger perspective, Harry.
Yeah, okay. So, this is just one poll, right? But let's take a look across an aggregate of polls. What are we seeing here? And I want to compare both to where Donald Trump is now versus where he was in late April, as well as where he was at this point in term number one. What you see is at -6 points, he is a little bit worse off than he is in the Ipsos Reuters polling, but he is considerably better than he was in late April when he was 9 points underwater. And more than that, look at this. He's nearly 10 points better than he was back in May 16th of 2017 in his first term. So what we see is Donald Trump's not just doing better than he was doing in late April of 2025. He's doing considerably better than he was doing at this point in term number one, about 10 points better than he was doing at this point in term.
You know, in a vacuum, -6 isn't good, but in Trumpian terms, you know, against himself, it's actually a pretty good position for him to be in politically compared to himself.
Exactly right. This is considerably higher than he has traditionally been.
So the big question here is why, Harry? Why did it bottom out? Why might it be rising?
Okay, why? Well, take a look at the chance of a recession. It's actually falling. The chance of a recession is falling. In late April, it was 60% according to J.P. Morgan. Look at where it is now. It's less than 50%. How about Goldman Sachs? You see the same thing. 45%, now falling to 35%. The bottom line is, it is the economy, the economy, the economy. As the chance of a recession has fallen, as the trade wars have kind of collapsed a little bit, at least with China, Trump trying to make a deal, we do see that I do think that the voters are responding to this, and therefore we're seeing Trump's approval rating going up.
The tariffs were really hurting him, and he backed off, and it may be helping him politically now.
Sometimes Donald Trump has some pretty good political instincts.
Harry, thank you very much.
I'd say very good political instincts. I mean, again, as I look through all of these polls, it's pretty impressive. He did take a slight dip, right, when around Liberation Day, but the markets have totally recovered. I want to get to some of what he's been saying, in fact, with the EU, because he's delaying some of those tariffs that could go into effect. But overall, what you're seeing here is a real momentum swing. And I think it's because Americans feel like, okay, somebody out there is representing us. They're caring about me and my family. And Donald Trump is riding that, and the Republicans are able to ride that and will continue riding that. On the other hand, you only have the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's representing illegals here in this country and fighting for them, or you have, the people like the Congresswoman out there in New Jersey that was, arrested by Alina Habba for her protests because she was trying to trespass onto the immigration facility, the Delancey facility there, rather than get an appointment or anything, and then was caught on videotape allegedly body slamming ICE agents. And so you contrast those images, right, with what Donald Trump is trying to do, and it's a very, very different picture. So consequently, we're seeing this, I think, real support for Donald Trump. I want to thank T.Y. James, who says he loves the show, and you're a Marine Corps vet. Thank you for your service. What do we think is going to happen with Marine Corps vets? What do we think is going to happen with vets? What do we think is going to happen with the military? It's an appropriate day to have that discussion, T.Y. James, because guess what? The president just moments ago speaking at the Arlington Cemetery, honoring those that we have lost. Let's listen in.
Crisis, American warriors have left behind the blessings of home and family to answer their nation's call. They've offered all that they had within them and given their last breaths to each and every one of us that we might live safe and breathe free. This morning we pay tribute to their immortal deeds. We share in the sorrow of their beloved families, and as one nation we give thanks for the ultimate gift they have so selflessly given to all of us. These warriors, and that's what they are, as great, great warriors, picked up their mantle of duty and service, knowing that to live for others meant always that they might die for others. They knew that. They asked nothing for it. They gave everything, and we owe them everything and much, much more. Each of the service members who have made the supreme sacrifice for our nation has also left an unfillable void and an unbreakable silence in the lives of all who love them. For the families of the fallen, you feel the absence of your heroes every day in the family. These are great families. These are wonderful families. In the familiar laugh no longer heard, the empty space at Sunday dinner, or the want of a hug or a pat on the back that will never come again. Every Gold Star family fights a battle long after the victory is won, and today we lift you up and we hold you high. Thank you, thank you, thank you for giving America the brightest light in your lives. It's what you've done.
A very somber tone from the president there. almost a little religious, right? Very respectful. I will tell you, he feels so passionately about making sure that our soldiers are safe. I've had that conversation with him several times. It is his top priority. And, you think about a day like today, we're here, right? Because of the enormous sacrifice that some individuals and their families have made. And we love them for that. We love our military for all that they do. They're the reason that we can have the freedoms that we have in this country. So we must honor and respect our freedom, and we must honor and respect them. My father-in-law is a veteran, God rest his soul. My father was in Vietnam, and I can't even imagine, right? And so many of you, I'm looking at some of you who are veterans that are watching this show. I can't even imagine what that's like to be up against. But the bravery it takes, the enormous willingness to sacrifice is incredible and is part of what makes us who we are, which is why we need to honor, we need to respect, we need to pay. Pete Hegseth coming out announcing a pay increase for the military, jump pay, he said. That was fantastic the other day. He also said something that I think is pretty important about the ideology, and this gets to what T.Y. Joe was saying, what happens, right, to the military as we go forward with the Trump administration. There's a willingness now to really shake things up. And Pete Hegseth, I know him well, we worked together many years at Fox. He's committed to making sure we get rid of the stupid stuff and the DEI and the wokeness and the insanity in the military that makes you less successful. Think about it. Like, if my child is going, if my son is going to be going in and he's on the front lines, do I want somebody who just kind of fits the picture and checks a box fighting alongside him? Or do I want the best possible warrior so I know that we both, my son and the other person, have a shot at coming home? Think about that, right? This is why the DEI craziness is so irrelevant. Joe, by the way, thank you. Joe Burrell, who says, thank you for the stream and the absolute truth. Happy Memorial Day. Let me go to Pete Hegseth right now on this wokeness.
Listen, everybody wants to be pushed. They want a challenge, purpose. They don't want to say, join the military where it's going to be nice and easy on you. No, how far can I go? Can I excel? Can I meet the standard? Can I be excellent? That's what young men and women of this nation want. If they want some woke garbage, they can go to college. If they want to train to be a warrior and be a part of something bigger than themselves and raise their right hand and seek purpose and honor and duty, join the U.S. military. Be a part of it. And that's why we've seen this record-breaking surge. I mean, the numbers don't lie, Will. It literally starts at Election Day for President Trump and the inauguration and what we've been building. It's been a surge we can barely keep up with, the amount of people that want to join the U.S. military, which is about the biggest vote of confidence I could conceive of.
It's great. I think back to the Biden days, and they actually had like transgenders trying to recruit on TikTok for the Navy. And I'm like, what are we coming to? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what are we coming to? So you get Pete in there, who's restoring, I think, some of the excitement and the confidence that people feel about our military. You get Trump in there, who's got their back. And this is a recipe for success. But lots of changes happening in the here and in the now, right? Remember to subscribe, share, like. Oh my gosh, Donald Trump, I think he's going to have a good day on Monday. We'll see how this all shakes out in the market. He set a new deadline for the EU trade tariffs. Don't forget, they were trying to get this done. They were trying to rush this one through. And it looks like he's pushing it out some 90 days to give a little bit more time because we want to do a deal, right? Ideally, you get everybody down on the tariffs, and that's going to be really, really good news for everyone. A lot of money still pouring into the markets. The Wall Street Journal had a big article this weekend about how individual investors are still going in. Why? Because there's still opportunity. And I'm telling you, I believe in this president. I believe in the agenda. I believe in what's coming and the tremendous sort of AI revolution that's going on, which is why I encourage you, by the way, to go to my own financial research firm, 76research.com. Sign up for the newsletter. You can get it for $1 a month. Just use code word dollar as an introductory rate. My gift to you. Here is Donald Trump saying, you know what? Good stuff coming. Good stuff ahead.
It's the biggest bill of its kind ever in the history of this country. And Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune have done an incredible job. I mean, I'll let you know we have to get a vote, but we have a lot of support for that bill. And if that happens on top of all of these trade deals that we're doing, this country will hit a point that you better go out and buy stock now. Let me tell you, this country will be like a rocket ship that goes straight up. This is going to be numbers that nobody's ever seen before. That's a very important element of all of this. You know, if we get that, if you don't, and the Democrats are fighting it only because they want to fight. They have Trump derangement syndrome. You know, if it was somebody else, they wouldn't fight. If you had a normal person, if you had some stiff sitting behind you, they'd be fine.
The TDS is pretty crazy, right? Anyway, he's delaying the EU tariffs. I do think that this is going to be decent news for the markets. We'll see how it all shakes out. But even if it's not, that's when I go in. I buy whenever it goes down. That's sort of my mantra, right? By the way, check out our portfolios, all doing incredibly well there at 76portfolios.com. 10 to 15 stocks in each one of those. So if you have a little bit of time this Memorial Day weekend, go look at that, 76portfolios.com. We get an income builder, so dividend stocks, so that one day you can retire and hopefully live off of some of your investment income. Inflation protection, American resilience, which is more of a bet on the future in terms of technology and growth, etc. I hope you have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. I'm actually off to I got to get changed up. I'm going to be going to a graduation party. It actually has me a little bit melancholy because it's one of my friend's daughters who's graduating from high school. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like where does the time go, right? I've been kind of feeling like, wow, it's all so fast, right? And so enjoy every minute that you can. I hope you get a chance to have a barbecue with your family and enjoy these times and hold them close and dear and know that it is thanks to our tremendous military that we enjoy all of this privilege. Don't ever forget it, not for a second. They say Happy Memorial Day, which always strikes me as a little bit strange to say because it's not really happy. We've lost loved ones on a day like this. It's more of a remembrance day. But be happy. They've given you something to enable you to be happy. So enjoy your day. Remember their sacrifices. And I will see you right back here on the show again tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't as well. See you soon, guys.